The harvest. The Malkari considered themselves the apex species of the known galaxy, not because of their technology, which was undoubtedly advanced, nor because of their physical prowess, which was formidable. No, the Malkari believed themselves superior because they had proven it countless times on hundreds of worlds through what they called the sacred hunt. For millennia, they had scored the galaxy for intelligent species worthy of being prey. A species too primitive offered no challenge. A species too advanced posed too much risk. The Malkari sought the perfect balance, sentient beings intelligent enough to provide sport, but not advanced enough to threaten their dominance. 3 standard cycles ago, their long-range scouts had discovered Earth. Dr. Ilara Chin peered through the luminescent barrier of her cell, studying the movements of her captors. They were tall, easily 7 feet, with iridescent scaled skin that shifted colors with their moves. Currently, the 3 Malkari guards displayed a calm blue-green as they prepared equipment in the central chamber of what she had determined was their hunting vessel. As the xenobiologist attached to Earth's first deep space military research station, Ilara had been analyzing an anomalous signal when her lab module was suddenly detached and pulled into the massive alien ship. That was 6 days ago. Since then, 5 other humans had joined her in captivity: a Russian cosmonaut, 2 civilian shuttle pilots, a marine biologist, and a park ranger from Wyoming. None of them understood why they had been taken. Until today. The human specimens have been implanted with trackers and analyzed for threat assessment, announced a tall Malkari whose scales showed streaks of gold, a sign of authority. Ilara had noted. Preparations for the hunt are complete. Ilara's mind raced. Her specialty was alien biology, but xenolinguistics had been her minor. 3 days of intensive observation had given her a rudimentary understanding of the Malkari language. What she was hearing turned her blood cold. Hunt Master Vrex, one of the subordinates, addressed the gold-streaked leader. Preliminary testing indicates these humans are physically inferior, but show unusual problem-solving capabilities. Recommendation is to limit their advantages. Hunt Master Vrex's scales rippled with what Ilara had come to recognize as amusement. Noted, but unnecessary. Every species believes itself special until the hunt proves otherwise. Standard protocols will suffice. The cell barriers dissolved simultaneously, and Ilara found herself herded with the other humans into the central chamber. A holographic display revealed a dense forest environment, clearly Earth, though Ilara couldn't identify the specific location. The Huntmaster addressed them in heavily accented English. "You have been chosen for the honor of the hunt. In 12 hours, you will be released into this territory. You will each receive survival tools and water. If any of you reach the extraction point within 5 planetary rotations, you earn your freedom and the freedom of your companions." This is more generous than our standard protocols. The marine biologist, Dr. Hammond, stepped forward. "Why are you doing this? We've done nothing to you." The Malkari's scales flashed a dismissive yellow. "The hunt requires no justification. It is our right as the supreme predators of the galaxy." Ilara remained silent, absorbing every detail. While the others protested or questioned, she observed the equipment being prepared. Weapons that appeared to be a mix of bladed instruments and energy projectors, environmental suits, and most importantly, the control interfaces for what she guessed were the tracking devices now embedded somewhere in their bodies. The next 12 hours were filled with preparation. Each human received a pack containing a knife, water purification tablets, a thermal blanket, and basic medical supplies. They were permitted rest cycles and provided with nutrient-dense food. The Malkari wanted healthy prey after all. During this time, Ilara quietly approached each fellow captive. "I need you to trust me," she whispered to the park ranger, a weathered man named Garrett. "I understand more than they realize. When we're released, we need to separate. They're expecting us to stay together out of fear." Garrett studied her with skeptical eyes. "You military. Research division. Xenobiology. But I've had tactical training. He nodded slowly. What's the play? They're hunting us for sport. But every hunt has rules, and rules can be exploited. When the deployment time arrived, the 6 humans were placed in individual drop pods. The hunt master's final words echoed in their ears. For the glory of the Valkyrie, let the hunt begin. Ilara's pod hurtled toward Earth's surface, stabilizers engaging only moments before impact. The door hissed open to reveal a misty forest dawn. Temperate climate, coniferous trees. Pacific Northwest, she guessed. Without hesitation, she retrieved her pack and moved out, deliberately heading west, while the others would likely go east toward higher ground. Her first objective was to locate water, not for drinking, but for another purpose entirely. 2 hours of careful navigation brought her to a swift-running stream. Kneeling beside it, Ilara drew the knife from her pack and made a quick, precise incision in her upper arm. Gritting her teeth against the pain, she probed the wound until her fingers found what she sought, a small metallic disc, no larger than a grain of rice. The tracking device. Ilara studied it for a moment before placing it on a flat rock by the stream. With the knife's handle, she crushed it, then scattered the fragments in different directions along the water's edge. One would continue downstream, carrying her electronic signature away from her actual position. By midday, Ilara had crafted a rudimentary spear from a straight branch and her knife, secured with strips torn from her thermal blanket. She found a defensible position, a small cave formed by fallen trees and rock, and began setting simple alarm triggers using pebbles balanced on twigs. Night fell. Somewhere in the forest, screams echoed. The hunt had claimed its first victim. Ilara closed her eyes, not in fear, but in concentration. She needed rest for what would come next. The sound of a snapping twig woke her before dawn. One of her alarms had been triggered. Moving silently to the cave entrance, she peered out to see a Valkyrie hunter, scales glowing a faint red in the darkness, methodically scanning the area. The alien wore minimal armor, a sign of confidence, and carried an energy weapon plus a ceremonial blade. Ilara waited, controlling her breathing as the hunter moved closer to her hiding spot. When it was merely 3 meters away, she launched her attack, not with the spear, but with a handful of dirt thrown directly at the creature's large, sensitive eyes. The Valkyrie hissed in pain and surprise, its scales flashing bright orange. In that moment of disorientation, Ilara thrust her spear forward, driving it into the junction between neck and shoulder, where she had observed the scales were thinnest. The hunter dropped its energy weapon, purple blood spurting from the wound. Ilara didn't hesitate. She grabbed the fallen weapon and fired, the unfamiliar technology discharging a burst of energy that left a smoking hole in the Valkyrie's chest. Her hands trembling slightly, Ilara approached the dead hunter. "I'm sorry," she whispered, not to the alien but to herself, for crossing a line she had never imagined crossing. With grim determination, she began stripping the hunter of useful equipment. The communication device would be invaluable, as would the armor components that might fit her smaller frame. Most importantly, she retrieved a small tablet-like device that displayed 6 blinking dots scattered across a topographical map, the locations of the other human captives. Dawn broke as Ilara finished her preparations, donning pieces of the alien armor over her own clothing, and armed with Valkyrie weapons, she studied the map. 2 dots had already gone dark, 2 humans dead. But 1 dot was surprisingly close, less than a kilometer away. Moving with newfound purpose, Ilara headed toward that signal. She found Garrett, the park ranger, expertly concealed in the hollow of a massive fallen redwood. His eyes widened at her appearance. "Jesus Christ, what happened to you?" "I evened the odds," she replied, handing him the alien blade. "And now we're going to do what they never expected. We're going to hunt the hunters." Garrett examined the weapon, then met her gaze with steely resolve. "I was special forces before I became a ranger. Just needed some peace and quiet." "Well," Ilara said grimly, "I'm afraid those days are over. We need to find the others, and then locate their base camp. The hunt master mentioned an extraction point. It must be their ship or a transport. As they prepared to move out, Ilara's stolen communicator emitted a series of clicks and hisses, Malkari language. She listened carefully, translating as best she could. "What is it?" Garrett asked. Ilara's face hardened. "They've discovered their dead hunter. The hunt master is calling it an anomaly, a lucky accident." Her lips curled into a cold smile. "They have no idea what's coming." In the distance, a burst of energy fire illuminated the forest canopy. Another hunt in progress. "Let's move," Ilara said, checking the alien weapons charge. "We need to reach the others before the Malkari do." As they melted into the forest, the huntmaster's voice crackled once more over the communicator, a tone of confusion evident even through the alien intonation. "Specimen 5's tracker shows impossible movements. Verify and report." What the hunt master couldn't know was that Specimen 5, Dr. Ilara Chen, xenobiologist, had spent years studying alien biology, psychology, and technology. What had started as an academic pursuit was about to become the greatest advantage humanity could have asked for. Because Ilara wasn't just running for survival anymore. She was hunting. The reckoning. By nightfall of the second day, Ilara and Garrett had located the Russian cosmonaut, Mikhail Kuznetsov, hiding in a river ravine. Though injured, a glancing blow from an energy weapon had burned his left leg. He was alive, and his military background proved invaluable. "The aliens, they hunt like it is sport," Mikhail explained as Ilara applied stolen Malkari medical gel to his wound. "I watched them take pleasure in killing Dr. Hammond." "They call themselves the Malkari," Ilara said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "And yes, this is sport to them, but we're changing the rules." Garrett returned from scouting with grim news. Found tracks. 3 hunters converging from different directions. They're closing in. Ilara studied the communicator, which showed 2 more human signals still active apart from their own. "We need to move, find the others." But first, she unfolded the stolen tablet, displaying a 3-dimensional map of the hunting ground. "I think I've located their base camp. Here, in this clearing. It must be where their transport landed." Mikhail examined the map, his trained astronaut's mind assessing distances and terrain. 8 kilometers northwest. Defensible position, elevated. "And that's our target," Ilara confirmed. "Not the extraction point they mentioned. That's just bait. We hit their camp, their communications, their ship. We take away their advantage." As they prepared to move out, a high-pitched whine filled the air, the unmistakable sound of Malkari energy weapons charging. They had been found. "Scatter," Ilara commanded, diving behind a boulder as energy blasts scorched the earth where they had been standing. What followed was chaos, but controlled chaos, orchestrated by 3 humans who refused to be prey. Garrett, using skills honed in military service, created a diversion with an improvised explosive fashioned from the power cell of their captured weapon. Mikhail, despite his injury, circled behind one hunter while Ilara engaged another. The firefight was brief but brutal. When silence fell once more over the forest, 2 Malkari hunters lay dead, and the third fled, scales flashing a pale yellow that Ilara recognized as fear. "They didn't expect this," she said, retrieving additional weapons from the fallen hunters. "Their arrogance is their weakness. They've hunted species that run, that hide, not ones that fight back strategically." The next day brought them to a cliff overlooking a small valley where they found the 4th survivor. Linda Way, the shuttle pilot, who had used her knowledge of flight mechanics to repurpose parts of her drop pod into rudimentary traps that had already injured one hunter. "I'm an engineer," she explained, eyes widening at the sight of their alien weapons and armor. "I figured if I couldn't outrun them, I'd make it costly to follow me." "You did more than that," Ilara said, showing her the hunter communications they'd intercepted. "They're calling your area a hazard zone. You've earned their respect." With Linda's engineering skills added to their growing resistance, they moved toward the Malkari camp with renewed purpose. The fifth human signal had gone dark during the night, another victim of the hunt. But the four survivors now constituted a force the Malkari had never anticipated. Their first strike against the alien camp came at dawn on the third day. Linda had repurposed the power cells from their captured weapons to create electromagnetic pulse devices that temporarily disabled the Malkari's more advanced technology. In the confusion that followed, Ilara and Garrett infiltrated the perimeter, gathering critical intelligence. 7 hunters remaining, plus the Huntmaster, Ilara reported when they regrouped in a secluded cave. Their ship is larger than I expected, not just a transport but a full hunting vessel. They'd done this before, many times. How do you know? Linda asked. Ilara's expression darkened. I accessed their trophy database. Earth isn't their first hunting ground. There are records of hundreds of hunts across dozens of worlds. Some species appear to have been hunted to extinction. Mikhail cleaned an alien blade with methodical precision. So we are not just fighting for ourselves. No, Ilara agreed. We're fighting for every species they've ever targeted. The Huntmaster's voice crackled over their stolen communicator. This hunt has become unprecedented. 4 specimens remain active beyond expected parameters. All hunters converge on Sector 7. We will end this aberration with overwhelming force. Garrett smiled grimly. They're panicking. They should be, Ilara said. Because we're not going to Sector 7. She pointed to the map. They're trying to herd us there, away from their camp, which is now vulnerable. So that's exactly where we're going. The Malkari base camp was imposing. A clearing dominated by their sleek, predatory ship and surrounded by sensor arrays and defense systems. But those systems were designed to keep prey out, not to defend against a determined attack by beings the Malkari had fundamentally underestimated. Using Linda's expertise, they bypassed the perimeter sensors. With Mikhail and Garrett providing cover, Ilara infiltrated the ship itself through an external maintenance hatch Linda had identified from studying the alien technology. Inside, Ilara moved silently through corridors designed for beings larger than humans. Her destination was the command center, where she could access the ship's systems. But halfway there, she encountered the last being she expected. A young Malkari, scales still pale and translucent with youth. Not a hunter, she realized. An apprentice. A child. The young Malkari froze, scales flickering between fear yellow and a curious blue. It made no move to raise an alarm. Ilara lowered her weapon slightly. I don't want to hurt you, she said, though she knew it couldn't understand her words. To her surprise, the young alien responded in halting English. Why do you fight? All prey runs. We're not prey, Ilara replied firmly. No sentient being is just prey. The concept seemed to confuse the young Malkari. Its scales shifted to a contemplative purple. Huntmaster says hunting is our right, our superiority. Is it superiority to target those who can't fight back? Or is it cruelty? The ship suddenly shuddered, Linda's explosives detonating against the external power couplings. The young Malkari's scales flashed alarm red, but it still made no move to sound an alert. Ilara made a quick decision. Go. Hide. This isn't your fight yet. Whether it understood her meaning or simply feared the armed human, the young Malkari retreated down a side corridor. Ilara continued toward the command center. She found it deserted. All hunters had deployed to Sector 7 as ordered. Working quickly, she accessed the main control interface, her understanding of xenotechnology allowing her to navigate the alien systems. First, she disabled the remaining tracker signals, protecting any future human captives. Then she downloaded the Malkari hunting records, evidence of their activities across the galaxy. Finally, she accessed the ship's communication array and broadcast a message on all frequencies, both in Malkari language and in every human language the ship's translator knew. To the Malkari hunting fleet and all who receive this message, the hunt on Earth has failed. Humanity rejects your classification as prey. We are not your sport. We are not your trophies. Any Malkari vessel entering Earth space will be considered hostile and will be met with the full resistance of a species that refuses to be hunted. We now possess your technology, your methods, and most importantly, your weakness, your arrogance. Consider this world and its people permanently off limits. As she finished the transmission, alarms blared throughout the ship. The Hunt Master's voice roared over the intercom. Human infiltration detected. All hunters returned to base immediately. But it was too late. Ilara had already initiated the ship's emergency protocols, locking down critical systems and encrypting them with algorithms the Malkari would struggle to break. As she raced back toward the exit, she transmitted one final message directly to the Hunt Master's personal communicator. Your hunt is over. Not just here, but everywhere. The prey has become the hunter. Outside, chaos reigned. Garrett and Michael had engaged the few Malkari left at the camp, while Linda's explosives continued to disable ship systems. When Ilara emerged from the hatch, Garrett covered her retreat with precise bursts from a captured Malkari weapon. We need to pull back, Ilara shouted. The hunters are returning. They withdrew into the forest just as the first hunters arrived, their scales flashing alarmed crimson as they discovered the damage to their ship. From their hidden vantage point, the humans watched the Hunt Master himself arrive. Larger than the others, his scales now a deep, furious red shot through with gold. He's losing control, Ilara observed. The hunt is sacred to them. Its failure is more than just a tactical defeat. It's a cultural catastrophe. As if to confirm her words, the Hunt Master's rage manifested in a burst of energy fire, directed not at the forest, but at his own subordinates, cutting down a hunter who dared approach too closely. We need to end this, Garrett said quietly. One way or the other. Ilara nodded, her decision made long ago. We take out the Hunt Master. Without their leader, their hierarchy will fracture. They'll retreat to regroup. The plan was simple but dangerous. Linda and Michael would create diversions at opposite ends of the camp, drawing away the remaining hunters. Meanwhile, Ilara and Garrett would target the Hunt Master directly. When night fell, they moved into position. On Ilara's signal, twin explosions rocked the camp perimeter. As predicted, the hunters scattered to investigate, leaving the Hunt Master with minimal protection. Ilara and Garrett advanced silently, using the Malkari's own stealth techniques against them. They found the Hunt Master inside the ship, attempting to override Ilara's sabotage of the control systems. Hunt Master Vrex, Ilara called out, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. The massive alien world, scales pulsing with rage and disbelief. Impossible, he hissed in his own language, which Ilara now understood all too well. How does prey know my name? We were never prey, she replied in Malkari, the alien syllables harsh in her human throat. That was your first mistake. The Hunt Master's scales rippled with confusion before settling into the deep red of battle rage. He drew his ceremonial blade, a weapon that had tasted the blood of countless species across the galaxy. Your second mistake, Ilara continued, raising her captured energy weapon, was thinking we wouldn't fight back. What followed was not a hunt but a battle, desperate, brutal, and unlike anything the Hunt Master had experienced in centuries of predation. Garrett flanked while Ilara held the alien's attention. The Hunt Master was powerful, his reflexes honed by millennia of evolutionary advantage, but he fought alone against two humans working in perfect coordination. When it ended, the Hunt Master lay mortally wounded, purple blood pooling beneath his massive form. His scales had faded to a pale blue. Acceptance, Ilara had learned of the inevitable. How? He rasped in English, his translator struggling with his failing systems. How did prey become hunter? Ilara knelt beside the dying alien, her voice carrying the weight of every human who had fallen in the hunt. We were always both, Hunt Master, every human. That's what you never understood. We evolved as prey that learned to hunt. We know both fear and determination. We understand both flight and fight. We are the species that turns weakness into strength. The hunt master's scales flickered one last time before growing still. In the distance, alarms wailed as the remaining hunters discovered their leader's fall. "We need to go," Garrett urged. "That ship's still capable of pursuing us." But Ilara shook her head, a grim smile forming. "No, it isn't. While I was in their systems, I set their engines to overload. This entire camp will be gone in 20 minutes." They escaped into the forest as the Malkari hunters frantically attempted to salvage their mission. When the explosion came, it illuminated the night sky like a new sun rising. The shockwave flattened trees for a kilometer in every direction, but Ilara and her companions were well beyond its reach. 3 days later, they stood at the edge of a small town in Oregon, having hiked out of the wilderness. Their story would sound incredible to authorities. Alien hunters, a desperate battle for survival, a ship destroyed. But Ilara carried proof. The Malkari database, securely stored in a device she had taken from the ship. "What happens now?" Linda asked as they prepared to rejoin human civilization. Ilara looked up at the stars, barely visible in the morning light. "Now humanity knows we're not alone in the galaxy. And now the galaxy knows that Earth is not a hunting ground." Somewhere in that vast expanse of space, the young Malkari apprentice she had spared had escaped in a small auxiliary craft moments before the main ship's destruction. It would carry word back to its people, not just of their defeat, but of a species that had fundamentally changed the rules of the hunt. And perhaps, Ilara hoped, it would carry something more. The first seeds of understanding that true superiority comes not from domination, but from respect. As Earth's governments scrambled to comprehend the implications of first contact occurring through conflict, Ilara was already planning. The Malkari technology they had captured would accelerate human development by decades. The knowledge of other worlds, both hunter and hunted species, would forever alter humanity's place in the cosmos. Most importantly, the message had been sent across the stars. Humans were not prey. They never had been. And any species that failed to understand this did so at their own peril. 6 months later, deep space monitoring stations detected multiple vessels approaching Earth. For a tense week, military forces worldwide prepared for possible invasion. But when the ships arrived, they did not belong to the Malkari. They were representatives of other species, some that had suffered under Malkari hunts, others that had merely heard rumors of the hunters' defeat. They came not for conquest, but for alliance with the species that had done what none of them had managed, turned the galaxy's most feared predators into the hunted. In a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Ilara Chen, now Earth's chief diplomatic officer, prepared to meet the alien delegation. As she straightened her uniform, she reflected on how the Malkari's greatest miscalculation had ultimately benefited humanity. They had inadvertently announced Earth's presence to the galaxy not as a world of victims, but as a planet of formidable defenders. "Ready, Doctor?" asked General Garrett, now commanding Earth's first extraterrestrial defense force. Ilara nodded, her expression resolute. Ready to show them that humans make better allies than enemies. As they walked toward the meeting chamber, monitors displayed the approaching alien vessels, peaceful emissaries from worlds far beyond human experience. The Malkari had meant to harvest humans as trophies. Instead, they had catalyzed humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage decades ahead of schedule. It was not the first contact anyone had imagined, but it had established one unassailable truth that would forever define humanity's relationship with the stars. Earth was home to a species that refused to be prey, a species that, when pushed, could outhunt even the most dedicated predators in the galaxy, and that, Ilara knew, would make all the difference in the universe that awaited them.